Long before Europe rose to power, before Rome became an empire that ruled the known world, there was another civilization, rich, powerful, and magnificent, right here in Africa. Its name was whispered in the corridors of trade, feared by enemies, and admired by travelers. This is the story of the forgotten empire of Africa that rivaled Rome. Our journey begins thousands of years ago, across the golden sands of the Sahara, where merchants once walked alongside camels carrying salt, gold, and stories. Beneath that blazing sun, Africa's ancient kingdoms thrived, building cities, armies, and legacies that shaped world history. Yet, much of their glory was erased or ignored by time. But today, we uncover their truth. Let us travel back to the ancient city of Carthage, an African powerhouse on the shores of the Mediterranean. Carthage was founded by the Phoenicians, but it became something uniquely African. By 800 BC, it had grown into one of the wealthiest cities on earth. Traders from every direction came to Carthage, from Greece, Egypt, Spain, and beyond. Its ships ruled the seas, and its influence stretched across North Africa, Sicily, and Iberia. While Rome was still a small republic learning the art of war, Carthage already had a navy of hundreds of warships. It wasn't just a city, it was an empire built on commerce, discipline, and innovation. But what made Carthage truly powerful wasn't just its trade, it was its people as spirit. One name still echoes through history: Hannibal Barca, the general who dared to challenge Rome itself. In 218 BC, Hannibal led an army of African soldiers, Numidian cavalry, and even elephants across the Alps, a feat so impossible that even modern historians stand in awe. His strategy at the Battle of Cannae nearly brought Rome to its knees. Imagine it, an African general, thousands of miles from home, defeating the most disciplined army of the ancient world. Hannibal became a symbol of courage and defiance, proof that Africa could stand equal to Rome. But Rome, hungry for domination, would not rest. Decades of brutal war followed. Eventually, Carthage fell. In 146 BC, the Romans destroyed it, burned it to the ground, poured salt into its soil so nothing could grow again. They tried to erase its memory. But the spirit of Carthage lived on, in stories, in trade routes, in the DNA of African empires that came after. Centuries later, another African empire would rise, one so rich and so vast that its name became legend, the Mali Empire. Founded in the 13th century, it stretched across West Africa, controlling trade routes that carried gold, ivory, salt, and knowledge. At its peak, the Mali Empire was one of the largest and wealthiest civilizations in the world. Its most famous ruler, Mansa Musa, became a global symbol of wealth and power. In 1324, Musa made his legendary pilgrimage to Mecca, but it wasn't just a religious journey. It was a declaration of African power. His caravan stretched for miles, with thousands of soldiers, servants, and camels carrying gold. Wherever he passed, he gave away so much gold that he disrupted the economies of entire cities. Cairo, Medina, even Mecca felt the shock of his generosity. Mansa Musa's journey wasn't just about gold, it was about prestige. It showed the world that Africa was not a land of darkness, but a continent of kings, scholars, and builders. Under his reign, Timbuktu became the intellectual heart of Africa. Its libraries and universities rivaled those of Europe and the Middle East. Scholars from all over came to study science, astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy in Africa. Imagine that, centuries before the Renaissance, Africans were already exploring the stars. But the Mali Empire was not the only jewel of Africa. Before Mali, there was Ghana, not the modern nation, but the ancient empire of Ghana, born around the 6th century. Known as the Land of Gold, it controlled vast reserves of this precious metal, which made it one of the richest kingdoms on the planet. Arab historians wrote of its kings as rulers who sat on golden thrones, wearing gold jewelry, surrounded by golden ornaments. Even the dogs of the royal court, it was said, wore collars of pure gold. Then came the Songhai Empire, rising in the 15th century and surpassing even Mali in power. Its capital, Gao, was a center of art, learning, and military strength. The Songhai rulers built professional armies and vast trade networks that connected Africa from the Atlantic to the Nile. They ruled with laws, not chaos, and their cities shone with architecture that blended African creativity with Islamic artistry. What made these empires truly remarkable was not just their wealth, but their governance and culture. Long before Europe's Age of Enlightenment, African scholars were writing books, preserving knowledge, and debating philosophy. Long before colonial borders, African traders and builders created roads, irrigation systems, and marketplaces that connected millions. These were not primitive societies. They were advanced civilizations, guided by wisdom and spirit. But history, as we know, is written by the victors. As Europe rose and Africa was targeted for its resources, many of these stories were buried, twisted, or forgotten. Colonial powers portrayed Africa as a continent with no history, a lie that served their ambitions. Yet, archaeology, oral traditions, and surviving manuscripts tell a different story. Africa was never silent. Its civilizations thrived long before Europe's awakening. Let us look deeper into Timbuktu, a name that once meant the city of scholars. At its height, the city had more than 25,000 students and thousands of manuscripts. Some of those ancient books still exist today, protected by families who kept them safe through centuries of war and colonization. They contain works on medicine, astronomy, geometry, and law, written by African scholars, centuries before similar ideas appeared in Europe. These texts prove that Africa was not a passive land waiting for discovery. It was a world of thinkers and dreamers. The story of Africa's forgotten empires is not just about lost glory. It's about rediscovery. It's about pride. Because even as cities fell, Africa's heartbeat never stopped. The spirit that built Carthage, Mali, and Songhai still lives today, in the innovation of African youth, in the art, in the music, and in the determination to reclaim the narrative. Modern historians are beginning to rewrite what was long ignored. Excavations in Sudan reveal the might of Nubia and Kush, African kingdoms that ruled Egypt and built pyramids older than those of the pharaohs. The kingdom of Aksum in Ethiopia developed its own written script, traded with Rome and India, and adopted Christianity long before most of Europe. The Great Zimbabwe ruins tell of architects who built stone cities with perfect precision, without mortar, centuries before the first European explorers arrived. All across the continent, the ruins speak. They tell stories of mathematicians, astronomers, engineers, poets, and rulers, all African. They tell us that Africa was never behind. It was leading in its own way, shaping trade, thought, and spirituality. So, why were these stories forgotten? Why were they erased from the world's textbooks? Because a powerful Africa did not fit the colonial narrative. To justify conquest, Africa had to be portrayed as primitive, but history says otherwise. Africa was a birthplace of civilization, not its student. When you think of Rome, think also of Carthage, its equal on the other side of the sea. When you think of European kings, remember Mansa Musa, the man whose wealth still has no rival. When you think of Athens or Alexandria, remember Timbuktu, the city of light in the heart of Africa. The world may have forgotten, but Africa remembers. And today, more people are rediscovering the truth, that Africa was not just a part of history, it made history. As we end this journey, imagine the sound of drums echoing across ancient cities, the scent of spice markets, the shimmer of gold dust in the sun, the laughter of people who knew their worth. This was Africa, proud, powerful, and eternal. The forgotten empire that rivaled Rome was never truly lost. It lives on in every story told, in every rhythm played, in every dream of a brighter African future. Because Africa's greatest empire is not in the past, it is being rebuilt today by those who remember who they are.